Thank you, Julie. Good evening. How are you folks doing tonight? Can everybody hear me okay in the back? Okay, great. I'd like to welcome you to the Clarkston High School Financial Aid Night. Again, my name is Greg Little. I'm here from Baker College, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to talk to you about financial aid this evening. Folks, we have a lot of information to cover. First, I'm going to explain the financial aid process and types of financial aid available to your student. Second, we'll go through the online financial aid application together, question by question. If you have any questions throughout the presentation tonight, please feel free to raise your hand. If you have a question that you don't want to share with the group, I will be available afterwards for you to ask the question directly. You ready to get started? Okay, I'm here as a community service function tonight. The presentation is about an hour and a half. Anytime you have a financial aid question, please feel free to reach out to me. I have my contact information up on the screen. I have my email address and my phone number. What's really important here is it doesn't matter if your son or daughter is attending Baker College. What's important is that they attend college somewhere. So don't feel that your son or daughter has to be considering Baker College for you to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions, no matter where your son or daughter is planning on attending. The purpose of the presentation tonight is to identify the many aspects of the financial aid process that are available to you and to assist you in completing the 2018-2019 FASFA. To apply for financial aid, you have to complete or submit the FASFA. You'll find that in the financial aid world, we use a lot of acronyms. You're going to learn quite a few of those tonight. First of all, the FASFA stands for the Free Application for Federal and State Student Aid. It collects certain personal and financial data used to calculate the student's EFC, which stands for Expected Family Contribution. We'll talk about that in just a minute. It also confirms that the student satisfies general eligibility criteria. For the high school seniors that are here tonight, it's going to look at the student and the parent's 2016 taxed and untaxed income, student and parents' asset and investment values as of the day that the FAFSA is submitted, the number of people that are in the household for the school year, and the number of people in the household that are going to be attending college for the school year. Again, the FAFSA produces what's called an EFC, Expected Family Contribution, which is like a dollar amount that the government feels based on the data from the FAFSA that the student and the parent can contribute toward the student's educational costs for that academic year. It's kind of like a measure of the family's financial strength. Now, the EFC has a range. It goes from 0 to $999,999. Financial aid offices at schools that you list on the FAFSA use that EFC to determine what types of financial aid your student's going to receive for that academic year. Every college and university in the nation has a 6-digit school code that you can list on the FAFSA that enables them to receive a copy of your student's processed FAFSA. You can list up to 10 school codes on your student's FAFSA. You don't have to list 10, but you need to list at least one. The student must also submit a FAFSA for each academic year that the student wants to be considered for financial aid. Before we go any further, let's identify the audience that we have here tonight. Can I get senior students and parents to raise your hand? It's a large part of our group tonight. That's fantastic. You folks are going to complete the 2018-2019 FAFSA application, which is going to be available in just a few days on October the 1st. What's important is that you get this application submitted as soon as possible. It's going to be available at 12 o'clock on October the 1st. How about juniors? Do we have any juniors that are here tonight? Good, so we have a good mix. Now you folks, you don't need to do anything right away. But just so you know, you are going to be completing the 2019-2020 FAFSA, which is going to be based off the student and the parent's 2018 income, taxed and untaxed income. I'm sorry, 2017 taxed and untaxed income. If you want to get an estimate regarding how much federal financial aid your student might receive before you submit the FAFSA, you can try what's called the FAFSA Forecaster at the website that's up on the screen right now. This will give you an idea of certain types of federal aid that your student may receive for that academic year. What you're going to do is you're going to enter the meat and potatoes of the EFC formula, like the student and the parent's adjusted gross income, the student and the parent's asset and investment values as of the day you're using the FASFA forecaster, the household size, and the number that are attending college. And this will kind of give you an estimate what your student might qualify for financial aid before you submit the FASFA. So what is financial aid? There are 4 forms of financial aid, which consists of grants, scholarships, employment opportunities, and loans that are available to help students pay the cost of attending the school of their choice. These resources are based on the student's documented financial need and are intended to supplement, not replace, the financial resources of the family. There are 2 categories of financial aid. The first category is gift aid, like grants, which is free money that you don't pay back, and scholarships, which are usually based on the student's academic merit. The second category is self-help aid, like employment opportunities like the Federal Work-Study Program and student loans that have to be paid back. We're going to talk about more of these 4 forms of financial aid later in the presentation tonight. To receive financial aid, your student has to meet general eligibility requirements. The student has to have a high school diploma, GED, or completed homeschooling at the secondary level as defined by state law. The student has to be enrolled or accepted in an eligible program of study. The student must be pursuing a degree, certificate, or other recognized credential. The student has to be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. If the student is male, he must be registered with the Selective Service. There are 3 ways that your male student can register with the Selective Service. First is by going to the Selective Service website, which is on the screen right now, which is sss.gov. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way, like some of us guys may have done, by going to the post office and fill out the card. Or your student can answer the Register Me question on the FASFA that we'll see here later tonight when we walk through the FASFA. If the student is male between the ages of 18 and 25, then it's the law that he's registered with the Selective Service. Got a question for you. Do we have any male students that might be 17 as of the date they complete their FASFA? Got a couple hands popping up. What you can do when your student completes his FASFA and he's 17 years old, he can answer the Register Me question on the FASFA, and then when he turns 18, he'll automatically be registered with the Selective Service, and he'll receive his Selective Service card in the mail. Continuing with eligibility requirements, the student must not have a conviction for possession or sale of illegal drugs that occurred while the student was receiving federal student aid. The student has to have a valid Social Security number, cannot be in default of a federal student loan, and cannot owe repayment of a federal grant. Last, the student has to maintain satisfactory academic progress as defined by the higher education institution that he's attending. These are rules that your student has to maintain to keep their financial aid eligibility. If your student starts college and they don't perform well academically, they could conceivably lose their eligibility for financial aid. Okay? So if your student has too many withdrawals from classes, or if they repeat classes too much, they could lose their eligibility. It's possible to get it back by completing an appeal form, but it's not always the easiest process to get it back. So I highly encourage you to talk to your students about the importance of doing well academically once they start college. Let's talk about federal methodology. This is the formula created by Congress that determines that EFC. Sometimes students or parents will say, well, you know, at this institution or that institution, they won't give us any financial aid. We are following the rules that our lawmakers have come up with that determine the logic for that EFC formula. Sometimes students and parents want to know what all is included in the EFC formula. If you go to the studentaid.ed.gov website that's up on the screen and search for EFC formula, that'll give you an idea what that EFC formula looks like. Again, the primary ingredients of that EFC would be the student and the parent's adjusted gross income for the base year. They also look at the untaxed income of the family. They look at the asset values of the student and the parents as of the day the application is submitted. They also look at the household size and the number of people that are in the household that are attending college. The federal government feels to the extent they are able, parents have the primary responsibility to pay for their dependent children's education. Students also have a responsibility to contribute toward their educational costs as well. Families should be evaluated in their present financial condition, and a family's ability to pay for educational costs must be evaluated in an equitable and consistent manner, recognizing that special circumstances can and do affect its ability to pay. We're going to talk about special circumstances in a little while. But if you have any instances in your family where there's been a significant change in income from 2016 to the current day, you might want to consider reaching out to the schools that your son or daughter is planning on attending to let them know about these special circumstances. And again, we'll talk about special circumstances here in a little while. Let's move on to the 3 methods that you can use to submit the FASFA. First, there's the FASFA on the web. This is a web-based application to file online. The parent and the student have to have what's called an FSA ID, which is used to electronically sign the FASFA. Okay? I'm assuming most of your students tonight are going to be dependent student for financial aid purposes. Therefore, student and parental information is going to be required for the FASFA. When you submit the FASFA, each of you have to have an FSA ID. The student has to have one, and if we have a family where the student lives with biological mom and dad, at least mom or dad have to have an FSA ID. To submit the FASFA online, you're going to go to FASFA.gov. Never let anyone charge you to submit a FASFA. This is a free process. There are organizations out there that will be happy to take your money to fill out the FASFA application for you, which is otherwise free. The second method to submit the FASFA is the paper FASFA. This can be downloaded or ordered. And then the last option is FASFA over the phone, where you can call the number that's on the screen right now and relay your information to a Department of Education customer service representative who will enter your FASFA for you. Tonight, since about 99% of the 20 million FASFAs that are submitted are done online, we're going to focus on the online process. So one of the most important questions that I'm asked when I go out to financial aid nights is, whose information do we use when we submit the FASFA? Okay? I'm sure some of you had that question as well. There's a handout from the table I'd like for you to refer to. Let's just start out with a few examples. Let's say that we have a household where the student lives with biological mom and dad. He's a senior. He's going to be submitting the 1819 FASFA, which is due when? October 1st. He's going to submit his FASFA with his and both of his parents' information, okay, for 2016. Let's say that the student's parents are divorced and he lived the last 12 months with his mother. Then he's going to submit his FASFA with only his mother's information and his information. Let's say that mother is remarried at the time the application is submitted. Then he's going to submit his FASFA with his information, his biological mom's information, and his stepfather's information. This next one is always a popular question. What if we have a situation where the parents are divorced and there's equal custody? The instructions in the FASFA tell you that if your parents are divorced or separated, answer the questions about the parent you live with more during the past 12 months. If you did not live with one parent more than the other, give answers about the parent who provided more financial support during the last 12 months or during the most recent year that you actually received support from a parent. If we have a family situation where both biological parents are not married but they live together, then both of their information has to be submitted on the student's application. And there are also provisions for same-sex marriage as well. Let's talk about documents that you need available whenever you submit the FASFA. You need the student and the parent's social security number readily available. If the student is an eligible non-citizen, the student would want to have his alien registration number handy. It's important that you utilize the IRS data retrieval tool to import the student and the parent tax data when you get to that part of the FASFA. This is how it happens. When you get to the income section of the FASFA, you are able to transfer your 2016 tax information, because you already filed those tax returns, directly from the IRS. So when you get to the income section of the FASFA, there's going to be a link that you can connect to go out to the IRS. You'll answer some questions, and it'll transfer your tax data directly into your student's FASFA. If for some reason you cannot utilize the IRS data retrieval tool, then you want to make sure you have your paper tax returns handy whenever you're completing the application. You also want to have bank statements and records of investments available, and also records of untaxed income. The last thing you want to have done, and you can actually get this done tonight, senior students and parents, I highly encourage you to get working on this right away. Go ahead and get your FSA ID done right away. That way when October 1st rolls around, it's ready for you to go to electronically sign your FASFA. Okay? Junior students and parents, you can also go ahead and request your FSA ID as well. How do you get an FSA ID? You can go to fsaid.ed.gov to request one. The FSA ID replaces the federal PIN. Do you have any parents that are veterans of the financial aid process that have been through it before? We have a couple hands popping up. So we don't use our PIN number anymore. We now have to use an FSA ID. This can also be used to sign other Department of Education documents electronically, like student loan counseling and also master promissory notes. Last, it can be used by students and parents throughout the aid process, including subsequent years. Who has more usernames and passwords than you know what to do with? Okay, so this time next year, you senior parents, you already completed the 18-19 FASFA. Chances are you might not remember what your FSA ID is. When you're completing the 19-20 FASFA for your student, they do have the option where you can retrieve it if you don't remember it. Okay, again, tonight we're going to primarily focus on submitting the FASFA online. Again, you're going to go to fasfa.gov to submit that. The cool thing about applying online is for subsequent years, you can click on Renewal FASFA. When you click on Renewal FASFA, all the student and parent demographic information will already be pre-populated on the application for the new year. So it's going to save you some keystrokes. But you can change your address if you need to, or your email address, or your phone number, things of that nature. But for subsequent years, it's pretty much going to be a matter of updating your and your students' income information for the applicable base year, and your students' asset values and the household size. The other cool thing about applying online is you have 3 options to get some help. They have a live chat option where operators available from about 8 in the morning until midnight. They give you a phone number where you can call them, and you can also email them as well. When you're finish completing the application online, you're going to receive what's called a FASFA on the web confirmation page, which will give you an estimate. Well, first of all, it's going to give you a confirmation number, date submitted, and time. It's going to give you the student's DRN number. Let's talk about that real quick. Let's say that your student starts out at school A for fall. Things are going great, their aid pays for their account, and for whatever reason they decide they want to go to school B. Okay? If the student wants to go to school B and use the rest of their financial aid eligibility for the year, they can contact school B's financial aid office and give them the DRN number for that year. That will enable the financial aid office at that school to add their school code to the student's FASFA so they can receive a copy of the processed FASFA so they can package aid for the student at their institution for the year. The other option would be signing in online to the fasfa.gov website and then adding that school B's school code to the student's FASFA. Also gives an estimate of federal Pell Grant eligibility. Our students' EFC, remember that goes from 0 to $999,999. And then an estimate of Stafford loan eligibility. Be careful with this printout. This is just an estimate of federal aid eligibility only. It's not in stone, okay? This does not tell you that the student's going to receive in state aid or institutional aid as well. This is just an estimate based on what your student's EFC is after the FASFA is processed. Okay, let's talk about where we go from here. After the FASFA is processed, it turns into what's called a student aid report. That's what the family receives. The SAR is the result of the FASFA being processed. The data that you submit from the FASFA is going to be summarized, and you're going to look over the student aid report for accuracy. If you need to make any changes to the student aid report, you're going to log into fasfa.gov again, log into your student's FASFA. It's going to bring up 3 columns. It'll have the original FASFA questions, your answers, and then it gives you a column where you can make corrections. If you completed the FASFA on the web, the student aid report is going to be available usually within 1 to 5 days. The student will get an email letting them know that their student aid report is available to view. Let's look at that student aid report. Student aid report, if you printed it out, it's usually between 8 and 10 pages. We're just going to focus on the front page. In the upper right-hand corner there, it's going to give us our EFC. That is the number that financial aid offices that you list on the FASFA are going to use to look up in different indexes to determine what types of federal, state, and institutional funds your student's going to receive for that academic year. Next to the EFC, you could possibly have an asterisk. That means that the application was selected for verification. We're going to talk about verification in just a minute. The C next to the asterisk is not good. You want to make sure that your student is taking their time whenever they're completing the FASFA online, because their information is going to go into about 7 different databases to ensure that that is that student. Some of the databases that are looked at would be the Social Security Administration, Veterans database is checked, Department of Homeland Security is checked, among others. Okay? So if your son completes his FAFSA and he puts his nickname down as his first name on the FAFSA, it's going to cause him to fail the Social Security Administration database because the name you put on the FAFSA doesn't match their records. And that could produce what's called a C code, okay? Make sure your student's taking their time when you're completing the FAFSA. Any errors could slow down the aid process for your student and potentially cost them funds for school. All right, so let's talk about verification. Verification is the process of proving the accuracy of the information submitted on the FAFSA. It's not like an IRS audit. Generally speaking, 3 out of 10 of the FAFSA applications are randomly selected by the Department of Education for verification. You might be selected for verification and your neighbor may not. Colleges and universities are going to request that the student and or the parents to complete certain documents and submit them as soon as possible. Now, the requests for these documents can either come by the mail or they could come by email. A lot of schools have gone green anymore, so they are sending electronic notifications for missing items, like for verification, and also sending award notifications electronically as well. And we already talked about how to correct the FAFSA. If you get notification that the student aid report is available to view, and you notice that you made an error, again, you can go out to FAFSA.gov, sign in, click on Make a Correction, and then go to the applicable question that needs to be corrected, and enter the correct value. Again, schools that you list on the FAFSA will package a financial aid award for your student and either mail or electronically send an award notification. Again, you can list up to 10 schools to receive a copy of the student aid report. You're going to use the award letter from each school to assist in your decision-making process in regards to what school your son or daughter is going to be attending. One thing that I'd like to let you know about is some schools may not send an award notification to your student unless they're enrolled or accepted at that institution. A good rule of thumb to follow would be to follow up with the schools. If you haven't heard anything from them, within 4 to 6 weeks after you submit the FAFSA. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. Contact their admissions office or their financial aid office and say, hey, you listed your school code on our student's FAFSA. We haven't heard anything from you. Do you need anything from us? Where do we stand in the awarding process? What does the financial aid award notification include? It'll outline how much the school will cost, what kind of financial aid package you'll receive, including federal, state, and institutional sources. Award letters really have no standard format, but they contain the same overall information, like how much the student's year in college will cost, the financial aid package that the school is giving to the student, what portion the family is expected to contribute, and any gaps you'll have to make up through other sources. Let's take a look at an example of an award notification for a student at Baker College. So first of all, we have our tuition. Baker is on semesters. So for the fall semester, if the student's taking 15 hours, the tuition cost is $5,850. We go to the financial aid section. It breaks it down. The student has a merit award, a Board of Regents scholarship, an increased credit incentive, the Pell Grant, and TIP for a total financial aid package of $6,750. The difference between the $6,750 and the $5,850 leaves $900 left over for the student to utilize for tuition or for books and supplies for that semester. In addition, it also informs the student of what their Stafford loan eligibility is, and if the student is dependent, what the parents may borrow in a Parent Plus loan that we'll talk about here in a little while. It gives the maximum eligibility. The student is eligible for a $4,500 subsidized Stafford loan and a $2,000 unsubsidized loan. The parents are also eligible to borrow up to $3,970 in a Parent Plus loan to help cover costs. Okay. All right, so I know I've hit you guys with a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yes?
Where do we get the school codes?
Okay, the question is where do we get school codes? When we walk through the FASFA here in a little while, you can either do a search, or if you know of schools that your son or daughter is potentially going to attend, they will give you their school code too. A lot of the schools' websites have their school codes on there. Yes?
If you have more than one student in college, do you have to fill out FAFSA form for each student?
Great question. The question is what if we have more than one student in college? Does each student have to complete their own FAFSA? The answer is yes. The cool thing about that is we'll see this later in the presentation. After you complete the first student's FAFSA and you get to the end on the confirmation page, it asks if you have another student in college, and you can click on the link and you can transfer the parents' data directly to student number 2's FAFSA, so it'll save you some time. In the back? The question is the FAFSA due on October 1st or is it available October 1st? And the answer is it's available October 1st. The FAFSA cycle for the 18-19 school year is 21 months, and it starts October 1st of this year, in a few days, and it's going to go through June 30th of 2019. Good question. All right, so it's making sense so far? One more question, then we'll move on.
Is there any validity that the sooner you do it, the better you work?
Okay, the question is there any validity in regards to the sooner you do the FAFSA, the more opportunity you have for certain types of financial aid? And that's absolutely true. We'll talk about this in a little while, but like the work study program and the federal supplemental educational opportunity grant, the government gives X amount of dollars to schools around the nation to spend for the year. And what a lot of schools do is they award it to the early filers. And the only way that other students would be able to get those funds is if those early filers choose not to attend or they stop attending during the school year. Good questions. I appreciate that. All right, so let's talk about special circumstances. What you have to do initially is complete your FAFSA with your income for 2016 as it was. But if you had any special circumstances between 2016 and now, like a job loss or any unexpected medical or dental expenses, anything that's unusual, okay? Again, you have to complete the FAFSA with the income as it was. The financial aid offices that you list on the FAFSA will package an award for your student, and you get an award notification. In the meantime, if you have any of these special circumstances that are listed up on the screen, be proactive and reach out to the schools and let them know what's going on in your family. Talk to the admissions and or the financial aid office. A lot of the schools have forms for you to complete where you explain what the situation is. You don't have to write them a book, but you need to clearly paint a picture, like if it's a job loss. Hey, in 2016, we were in 6 figures. My husband lost his job, the plant closed, it went overseas. Now we're only earning unemployment. We've gone from 6 figures down to about $15,000 a year. Okay, short and sweet. You need to provide proof of the unusual situation. A lot of times families submit the Michigan Unemployment Determination Letter, which tells the financial aid office a lot. It tells them where the parent worked at, how many weeks they're getting in unemployment, how much they're getting per week, and for how long they're going to be receiving it. Okay? The goal here is to lower that EFC for your student to increase the aid eligibility. Another special circumstance that we often see in the financial aid world is a situation where an otherwise dependent student is not able to provide parental information on their FAFSA due to mitigating circumstances. I'll give you an example. One example would be where The student is a dependent student for financial aid purposes, and mom is deceased and dad is in jail. So it's not possible for the student to submit their FAFSA with parental information, right? If you have any of those situations, reach out to the school to let them know what that situation is. They'll usually want proof. Proof would be in the form of mother's death certificate, and then proof that father is incarcerated. What they can do in that instance is complete what's called a dependency override, where they're making an otherwise dependent student independent for financial aid purposes, so parental information would not be needed. You want to follow through. Responses after you complete the FAFSA could come from the federal government, the state government, or colleges that are listed on the application. You want to be prompt with any requests. Failure to respond by designated deadlines or requests may result in the loss of financial aid eligibility for your student. Let's drill a little deeper on the 4 forms of financial aid. Again, those are grants, scholarships, work study, and student loans. Up on the screen here, these are some of the larger forms of financial aid that you'll see that will be available to your student. Federal aid, you have the Pell Grant, the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, Teach Grant, Federal Work Study, Stafford Loans, and the Federal Plus Loan. On the state level, we have the Michigan Tuition Grant, Michigan Competitive Scholarship, Tuition Incentive Program, Children's of Veterans Tuition Grant, and Gear Up. We're going to talk about a few of those in just a moment. If you need assistance at any time with federal or state of Michigan financial aid, I provided you with phone numbers that you can utilize. There's also the first website that's up there is to a federal link to a document called Funding Your Education. I highly recommend that you take a peek at this. This is like a 75-page document that is chock full of really fantastic federal financial aid information. The last bullet that's up there, michigan.gov, that'll give you some more information about state of Michigan aid that's available. You also should have picked up a handout that gives more details on federal financial aid that are available to your student, and also state of Michigan aid available as well. So let's just start at the beginning. Grants is the first type of financial aid. This is money from either the federal government or the state government that doesn't pay back. Schools that you list on the FAFSA use that EFC to look up in different indexes to determine if your son or daughter is going to qualify for certain federal or state grants. A FAFSA is required for all federal grants. The first one that we'll take a peek at is the federal Pell Grant. This is for undergraduates pursuing their first baccalaureate degree. The Pell Grant is a federal grant awarded based on need. The award amount for the current school year that we're in right now for a full-time student is between $606 and $5,920. The EFC range to qualify should be between 0 and about $5,328 for a full-time student. There's also a cap on the number of years that your student can receive the Pell Grant. Your student can only receive the Pell Grant for 6 years at full-time status with a qualifying EFC. After that, they are no longer eligible for the Pell Grant. The Pell Grant is also portable. So in that instance where the student starts out at school A, let's say they had a $3,000 Pell Grant for the year, $1,500 paid for fall semester. If they decide to go to school B, they can use the other $1,500 in the Pell Grant at school B for the second half of the school year. Another type of federal aid that's available is the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. This is for undergraduates pursuing their first baccalaureate degree. This is awarded first to students with exceptional financial need, which would be students with the lowest of EFCs at that institution. Priority is given to federal Pell Grant recipients, and the dollar amount for the year is between $100,000 and $4,000. A type of state aid that's available to your student would be the Tuition Incentive Program. To qualify, a student must have or have had Medicaid coverage for 24 months within a 36 consecutive month period, as identified by the Michigan Department of Human Services. TIP pays in 2 phases. I'm not going to read all this to you, but the first phase of TIP will pay $106 per credit hour up to the associate's degree. Once the student earns their associate's degree, and if they're working on a bachelor's degree, then they can receive what's called phase 2 TIP, which is 5 $400 checks. Now, years ago, in order for a financial aid office to award TIP to a student, the family had to submit what was called a TIP letter from the state of Michigan to the financial aid office. The state of Michigan no longer uses these letters. What they want the student to do is go to the website that's up on the screen and certify what institution they plan on attending, and the state of Michigan will send the funds to that institution. Now, in past years, I've been guilty whenever I come out to talk about financial aid. I strictly focused on federal aid and state of Michigan aid. But I'd always get some questions about my son or daughter's plan on going out of state. What types of aid are available in Nebraska or California or Maine or whatever? I have a website that you can go to up there. You click on the applicable state and it'll give you some information about the types of financial aid that are available to your student in those states. There are also some institutions that require families to complete what's called the CSS PROFILE form. This form is an online application that collects information used by certain colleges and scholarship programs to award institutional funds. There are approximately 400 institutions nationwide that require this form. You may file the profile as early as October 1st. However, you should file no later than 2 weeks before the earliest priority filing date specified by your college. Any questions on grants?
How do you know what college if they want the CSS?
Okay, the question is how do we know what college needs the CSS form? If you go to their website, looks like I don't have that up there for you. If you just do a Google search for CSS profile, there's a list of the institutions. Yeah, good question. And I think, you know what, I brought a list with me tonight. If you want to see me afterwards, I'll be happy to take a peek. Okay? Good question. All right, so let's move on to scholarships. I have a handout for you that has some websites that are free that you can go to initiate a scholarship search. Scholarships are usually awarded based on academic excellence and not necessarily on need. Some sources of information about scholarships are the library, internet search engines, high school counselor's office, church, and any organizations a student may belong to. The way it works with these scholarship searches is the student answers questions like what their high school grade point average was, college major, volunteer activities, etc. Based on the student's responses, the website will determine the scholarships for which the student meets the eligibility criteria. And then they're going to pass the ball to your student. Then it's up to your student to follow through with the application process. Okay? There are tens of thousands of scholarships that are out there. Okay? The problem is not enough students apply for them. When I was working on campus, I'd have businesses call me all the time. They'd say, "Hey, Greg, did you get that application that I sent you for the scholarship for $1,000?" And I'd say, "Yeah." "Did you post it?" I'd say, "Yes, I did." "Well, we haven't received any applications." I'd say, "Well, unfortunately, that's right." But there are a lot of institutions that can't even give the money out because no one will apply. It's hard work. I know someone that submitted 50 to 60 scholarship applications before he finally won $2,000. That's a lot of work, right? But that's $2,000 that he doesn't have to pay back in federal student loans when he's done with school. Has anyone ever heard of Christina Ellis? Got a couple hands popping up. Christina's father passed away when she was in high school, when she was a freshman or sophomore. Her mother had a talk with her and she told her that she wanted her to go to college, but she didn't have the financial means to make that happen. Christina used that talk with her mother as motivation to become a scholarship expert. She became so good at scholarship searches and winning scholarships that she won $500,000 in scholarships. Her book is a book that the Department of Education recommends. Okay, it's an easy read. I think it's a little over 100 pages, but if you pick that up at your local library or local bookstore, I think you'll find some valuable hints that will help your student out in scholarship searches. The next book that the Department of Education recommends is called the Ultimate Scholarship Book 2017. Anyone recommend the old Yellow Pages, or remember the old Yellow Pages book? Remember how thick it used to be? Okay, this book is about 850 pages, and each page has between 6 and 8 scholarships on it. Okay, this is a good place to start for your student to start searching for scholarships. Another scholarship that's available to your student will be the Michigan Competitive Scholarship. I'm not going to read all the information that's on the screen to you, but this is available to students who demonstrate financial need and meet merit requirements. This can be used at public or private Michigan colleges and universities. For dependent students who are eligible citizens, the parents must be a Michigan resident. The current award amount for the 17-18 school year that we're in right now is $1,000. And beginning with the class of 2017 forward, the qualifying SAT score is a minimum of 1,200. I'm going to go through these next few slides rather slowly, but these are just some other resources for you to explore in your search for funds for higher education. Okay, questions on scholarships? Yes?
And since it's a transfer, kind of transfer between ACT and SAT, is there a minimum for ACT score for this year?
Yeah, the question is in regards to the qualifying score to qualify for Michigan Competitive Scholarship. Prior to the class of 2017, it was based on ACT scores. They had to have at least a 23 or a composite of 90, I believe. And then 2017 forward, they had to have an SAT score of at least 1,200. Okay, good question. All right, next we're going to move on to work study. Work study is the third form of financial aid. Work study is usually funded from the federal government. This is like a part-time job on campus. This program was created to assist students in paying for their educational costs. However, it can be used as a regular paycheck too. Contact schools about work study applications and the process to be put on the work study program. With some institutions, it's as easy to get put on the work study program as indicating, yes, I want to work study. And then if you have a qualifying EFC, they'll automatically put you on the work study program, and your work study allocation will show up on your award notification. Other institutions have a different process where they want the student to contact probably the financial aid office to inquire about different positions that are available in the different departments on campus. Then they'll send the student to that particular department to be interviewed. So work study, like the SEOG grant that we talked about earlier, these funds get spent quickly. So if your student plans on working a part-time job, I would highly recommend that you have your student inquire about that as soon as possible. Okay, the last form of financial aid would be student loans. Student loans in the Stafford Loan Program are funded by the federal government through a program called direct lending. There are also institutional and private loans available as well. Now, the amount of money that your student may borrow is going to be based on their financial aid dependency status and their college grade level. So very soon, we're going to look at the 13 dependency questions that are asked of the student on the FASFA application. As soon as the student can answer yes to any one of those questions, then they're considered independent for financial aid purposes, and parental information is not needed for the FASFA. So let's just take a look at the amount of money that your student can borrow for the 18-19 school year. Most of your students are going to be dependent for financial aid purposes, and they're going to be what's called a grade level 1 or a freshman in college. So for their first year in college, they can borrow what's called $3,500 in base eligibility. Base means that that $3,500 can either be all subsidized, it could be all unsubsidized, or it could be a portion of both. What determines that is that EFC that we've been talking a lot about. That EFC plays a crucial role in determining financial aid eligibility for your student. Since the student is a freshman student, they can borrow an additional $2,000 in unsubsidized funds for a total of $5,500 for the school year. As they move up in grade level, the amount of money that they can borrow moves up as well. When they become a sophomore, that base eligibility is $4,500, and they still get the additional $2,000 for a total of $6,500. And then once they reach junior and senior level, they can borrow $5,500 base eligibility with an additional $2,000 in unsub for a total of $7,500. Okay. Let's identify what subsidized and unsubsidized means. On both of those loans, a student doesn't make any principal payments on the loan until 6 months after they graduate or drop below part-time status. On the subsidized loan, the government pays the interest while the student's in school. On the unsubsidized loan, the student is responsible for the interest while they're in school. There's a cap to the amount of money that your student can borrow in their undergrad studies. A dependent student can borrow up to $31,000 in their own name in their undergrad studies. No more than $23,000 of that can be subsidized. If your student is an independent student for financial aid purposes, they can borrow up to $57,500, And again, no more than $23,000 of that can be subsidized. All right, we already identified what is subsidized and what is unsubsidized. The interest rates for the current year that we're in right now would be 4.45% fixed for subsidized and unsubsidized, and the government does charge 1.066 origination fee for the student to take out the loan. The student doesn't start making payments on the loan until 6 months after they graduate or drop below part-time status. This loan is guaranteed. So it's automatic that the student is going to receive this loan. It's not based on credit. No co-signer is needed. The student is going to be able to borrow the dollar amount that they qualify for based on their dependency status and their grade level. Last, let's talk about the Federal Plus loan. They're plus loans for parents of dependent students. The annual loan limit is the cost of attendance at that institution minus any aid the student is receiving. The interest rate for the current school year that we're in is 7%, and the government does charge a 4.264% origination fee for taking out the loan. The parent does have the option of postponing repayment for 6 months after the dependent student ceases to be enrolled at least half time. Now, the Parent Plus loan is based on the parent's credit. So the way it works, student submits their FASFA. They receive their award notification. Tells them what are the 4 forms of financial aid they're going to be able to receive. If the student is a dependent student, the Parent Plus loan eligibility will be on there as well. They'll tell the parent what their maximum is that they can borrow and what's recommended. If the parent chooses to borrow the Parent Plus loan, then it's going to be subjected to a credit check. If it's accepted, then life is good. The only other thing that the parent has to complete is what's called a master promissory loan. If it's denied, then that enables the student to borrow another $4,000 in their name in an unsubsidized loan. So your freshman dependent student, they automatically get their $5,500, and then if the parent requests the Parent Plus loan and it gets denied, the student gets another $4,000 for the year for a total of $9,500. Okay? I'm not here to preach loans to you. In fact, I encourage you not to take out student loans if you don't have to. But there are some families that have to lean on these loans to help pay the cost of education for their student. That's the reason why I communicate this information to you folks in case it may benefit a family or two. Okay? All right, we are kind of like at the halftime point of the presentation. Does anyone have any questions on anything that we've covered so far? This making sense, I hope? All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. So we've learned a lot about financial aid already and the process to apply. Now we're going to apply what we learned by walking through the FASFA online for a dependent student. Okay? In this scenario, we're going to pretend that the student lives with his biological mom and dad, and that there is a sister in the household as well. So we have 4 people in the household, and 1 is going to be attending college. We're going to begin by accessing the FASFA website, which is www.fasfa.gov. Once we go to that website, the screen here is going to come up. We can either enter the student's FSA ID and password, or we can enter the student's first name, last name, social security number, and date of birth. If the student already has an FSA ID, go ahead and enter the FSA ID and password. I'd like to draw your attention to the area off to the right there. It's called Help and Hints. This is going to assist you in answering the specific question that you happen to be on at that point in time. So if you ever get stuck in a particular question and you want some more information, look off to the right under Help and Hints, and it will guide you to answer the question correctly. Okay, we click on Next. It's going to bring up this screen here. We're going to click on Start 2018-19 FASFA. I've got a question for you though. Do we have any seniors that want to get a head start in college and want to attend summer of 2018? This never fails. No one raises their hand. Okay, but just in case you have a student that wants to get a head start on college and wants to start early and doesn't want to dip into the 18-19 financial aid, you can submit the prior year FASFA. For your seniors, that is going to be the 2017-2018 FASFA application. That's going to be based on the student and the parent's 2015 income. The reason why you want to do this if your student's going to be attending summer is so you can utilize funds from the 17-18 school year so you don't have to dip into 18-19 for the summer semester. Okay, then click next. This brings up where we're going to enter a password. This is the password that you'll use when you need to access the FASFA again. You're going to enter the password and then click on next. Another thing I want to let you know about the FASFA is if you start the FASFA and something comes up and you're not able to complete it that day, whenever you come back to the FASFA, it'll pick right back up where you left off, so you don't have to key in all the information again. Okay, so we're going to look at the sections that you're going to complete whenever you're completing the FASFA online. The first section is student demographics. The next is school selection. Next is student's dependency status, parental demographics, financial information like income and asset investment values, an area for the student and the parent to sign and submit, and then a confirmation page. So what we're going to do is we're just going to walk section by section through the FASFA. If you have any questions, just let me know. So the first question wants to know the student's first, middle, and last name. You're going to enter that exactly as it shows on the student's Social Security card. Next, they want to know the Social Security number is already going to pre-populate. They want to know the student's date of birth. They want to know the student's gender. And then the address that the student wants all financial aid related information to be mailed to. Any questions on this screenshot? Okay, clicking next. Next, they want to know, has the student lived in that state for at least 5 years? This is one of our state residency qualifying questions for state aid. So we're going to pretend that the student lives in Michigan, lived here the whole life, so we're going to answer yes. Next will be the student's phone number, student's email address, the student's marital status as of today, and then wants to know if the student has a driver's license, yes or no. Questions on this section? Okay, pretty simple so far, right? Okay, next they want to know, is the student a U.S. citizen? It's going to give you 3 options. One is yes, I'm a U.S. citizen, or I'm an eligible non-citizen. It's going to give the student the option to enter their alien registration number. And then the last option would be I am neither of the above. Next question is our selective service question that we talked about. Wants to know, is the student registered with the selective service? In this example, these are screenshots that the Department of Education provided to us, so bear with me, they're not really the best. We'll pretend that the answer to the selective service question is no. When you click on no, then it'll ask if the student wants to be registered with the selective service via the FASFA. You can click on yes, and then the student will automatically be registered. Next question wants to know what will be this high school completion status when the student begins college for the 18-19 school year. Our answer will be high school diploma. Next, they want to know the student's college grade level when they begin the school year. Do we have any students that are dual enrolled? Anyone? Okay, if your student happens to be dual enrolled, taking high school and college classes right now, you would still want to answer the question, is first year never attended? Next, they want to know the degree or certificate that the student will be working on during the school year. Next, they want to know, is the student interested in being on the work-study program, yes or no? Next, will the student have their first baccalaureate degree before the school year begins? We have a high school senior, so our answer is going to be no. Next, they want to know if the student is in the foster youth system. In our example, the answer is no. The next 2 questions, they want to know what the highest schooling completed for both the biological parents of the student. Some states have funds specifically earmarked for first-time college students. This has no bearing on state of Michigan aid whatsoever, but you still want to answer the question correctly, so it'll give you the options of middle school, high school, college, or unknown. The next question, have you ever received federal student aid? High school seniors have never received aid yet, so that answer would be no, but for subsequent school years, if they received aid for the previous year, they're going to answer yes, and then it's going to ask if they've ever been convicted or for the possession of or sale of illegal drugs for an offense that occurred while they were receiving federal student aid. Hopefully the answer will be no. Questions on this section? Yes?
How do you know who's parent one and who's parent two?
Okay, the question is, how do we know who is parent one and parent two? It's up to you to decide. Prior to same-sex marriages, they had the questions formatted as father/stepfather, mother/stepmother. But with same-sex marriages, they changed it to parent one and parent two. So it really doesn't matter who is who, how you do it. Yes?
You said biological, but then the three is step-parent, so it's not okay?
Those are two separate instances. Okay, so the last two questions that are up there pertain to biological parent. Okay, as far as whose information to use on the FASFA, we're still going to follow the rules that we talked about earlier in the presentation. Good question. Okay, so we're moving on, clicking on next. Next, you're going to enter the high school and the city and state that the student attended. Click on confirm, then click next. Next is our section where we're going to list our school codes. So how many school codes can we list up to on the FASFA? 10. We don't need to list 10, but we need to list at least how many? Exactly. All right, so if you need to do a search, you can click on the state, the city, and enter the school name, and it's either going to bring up that specific school that you're looking for, or several schools, and you just click on the one that you want, click on the box, and it's going to add the school to the student's FAFSA. Or if you know the school code, you can just go ahead and enter it in the box on the right. Okay. Questions on this section? Yes?
The same code you see when you go on the ACT or SAT sites, or is that a different code? Like it's just a school code for like ACT or SAT, is that the same code or is it different?
You stumped me. The question is in regards to, is the school code on the FAFSA the same school code that pertains for ACTs and possibly SATs? I don't know the answer to that. I would, just to be safe, if you're not sure of the school code, just look it up. Yeah, or contact the school. They'll be happy to give it to you. All right, we're clicking on next. They want to know the student's housing plans. So you click on housing plans for each institution that you list on the FAFSA. It'll give you three options. One is off campus, the other is on campus, and the other is live with parents. If your student plans on living in the dorms for the 18-19 school year, that's another time when you want to contact the school to find out what that process is to make sure you're on top of that. All right, next we are on the dependency questions. There are 13 dependency questions that determine whether or not parental information is needed for the student's FAFSA. As soon as the student is able to answer yes to any one of these questions, then parental information is not needed. Okay? Let's go through these questions real quick. The first wants to know, was the student born before January 1st of 95? Our answer is no. As of today, is the student married? No. At the beginning of the school year, will the student be working on a master's or a doctorate program? No. Do you now have or will you have children who receive more than half of their support from you for the school year? Our answer is no. Do you have dependents other than a child or spouse who will receive more than half of their support from you for the school year? The answer is no. Again, these questions are being asked of the student. Are you currently serving on active duty in the armed forces? Our answer is no. Are you a veteran in the armed forces? No. At any time since you turned age 13, were both your parents deceased? Were you in foster care, or were you a dependent or ward of the court? Our answer is no. Were you ever an emancipated minor? Our answer is going to be no. Does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you? Our answer is going to be no. And then there's a question that pertains to homeless. Okay. In our example tonight, all of our answer is going to be no. Therefore, parental information is going to be needed for the FAFSA. Since we answered no to all those questions, it brings up this screenshot here. It says, based on your answers to the dependency status questions, you are considered a dependent student. This means that you must provide parental information. Select I will provide parental information and click next to continue to parent demographics. And then it says, if you have special circumstances and are unable to provide parental information, under very limited circumstances, you may be able to submit your FAFSA without parental information. Select I am unable to provide parental information and click on next to get additional information. I'm not going to go through these next screenshots. I'm just going to go ahead and explain them to you real quick, okay? So first of all, if a parent cannot provide parental information on their FAFSA because they don't have contact with their parent, or they should not have contact with their parent, that is grounds for what's called a dependency override. The student would indicate on the FASFA that they're unable to provide parental information. When the school receives the processed FASFA, they're going to see that. They're going to send a message to the student to explain to them why the student cannot provide parental information on the FASFA. Okay? And then they'll follow through with that dependency override process if it pertains to the student. There are also instances where the parents just refuse to provide their information on the FASFA. In that instance, if the parents refuse to provide their information on the FASFA and the parents do not provide any type of support to the student could qualify for a $5,500 unsubsidized student loan. Okay? If that pertains to your student, you want to reach out to the financial aid office to get the applicable forms to complete for a parent's refusal to complete the FASFA. Now, $5,500 might not go very far, but it's a whole heck of a lot better than in the past. In the past, if the parents did not provide information on the FAFSA, the student was left with either paying cash or not attending at all. Okay, so in our example, we are providing parental information. That brings me to the parent demographics section. And we're going to start with these questions. First, it wants to know, as of today, what is the marital status of your legal parents? In our example, the student lives with biological mom and dad, and they are married. Next, it wants to know the month and year that the parents were married. And then the next set of 4 questions are going to be for the parent, the father and the mother. They want to know the social security number, the last name, first initial, and date of birth for each of them. Moving on, the parent would enter their email address, and they want to know, has the parent lived in that state for at least 5 years? Then next, they want to know the household size. In our example, we have mom, dad, the student, and then sister. So our household size is 4. Then they want to know, of the 4 that are in the household, how many are going to be attending college? We'll pretend that brother and sister are twins. So each of them are going to be attending college, so the answer is 2. And each of them has to complete their own FAFSA, right? The answer would be yes. Now, question for you. What if mom is attending college? Can I automatically change the number in college to 3? Anyone? Not initially, but that is a basis for a reevaluation. Okay? So what would happen is this student would be packaged with 4 in the household, 2 in college. They'll receive their award notification. And then if mom is attending college on an at least half-time basis, there is what's called a parent college form that the college can provide to you. Mom would complete it, provide proof that she's attending college on an at least half-time basis, and then they can increase the number in college from 2 to 3, which, just so you know, in most instances, has a favorable effect on the student's EFC. Okay? Not trying to get your parents to go back to school, just giving you a little bit of information. Okay? All right, so we're going to, one more question. What if grandmother's going to be living with mom and dad during the school year? Can we make the household size 5? We can only make it 5 if mom and dad are going to be providing more than half of grandmother's support for the school year. Otherwise, it's going to remain 4. All right, we're clicking next. Up at the top, it says, attention, you must provide financial information from your parents' 2016 tax return on the following pages. First question is for 2016, have your parents completed their IRS income tax return? Our answer is yes. The 2016 tax return filing season is already over. The parents should have already completed their tax return. For 2016, what is your parents' filing status for that tax return? Our answer would be married filing a joint tax return. And then the next set of questions is going to determine whether or not the parents can utilize the IRS data retrieval option to transfer their tax data directly from the IRS to the student's FAFSA. So the first question is, did the parents file an amended tax return? Our answer is going to be no. But if that answer is yes, then that disqualifies them from being able to utilize the IRS data retrieval option. In that instance, they want to make sure they have their 2016 paper tax return handy so they can enter the information from the tax return directly to the applicable FASFA question. Next, they want to know, did the parents file a foreign tax return for 2016? In our example, that answer is going to be no. Since those two answers were no, it says applying is faster and easier if you transfer your tax return information into the FAFSA with the IRS data retrieval. We're going to click on the link to the IRS. Next, it wants to know which parent are you, and then it's going to ask for the parent to enter their FSA ID and their password, and then they're going to click on the bottom right at the bottom there. It says proceed to IRS tax site. It just tells you that you are entering a U.S. government system that's for authorized use only. That's okay. You're going to click on OK. It brings up the next screenshot here. The first 4 lines are already pre-filled based on the FAFSA responses. You are going to answer the bottom questions, which would be the address, the country's already there, and the zip code, and click on submit. Once you click on submit, it's going to bring up the FAFSA applicable data elements that are going to be transferred from the IRS directly into the FAFSA. Some of those would be adjusted gross income, income tax, IRS exemptions, education credits, just to name a few. In the middle column there, you can see that it has the values that the IRS has, and then the column on the right, it tells you what FAFSA question that it's going to pertain to. Okay? Down at the bottom, we're clicking on transfer my tax information into the FAFSA, and then clicking on transfer now. And that brings us back to the FAFSA application. Tells us that we have successfully transferred 2016 IRS tax information to the FAFSA. Let's just go through these questions real quick. First, it says, what type of income tax return did your parents file for 2016? They filed a 1040, and you notice out to the right it says that that was transferred from the IRS. Next, they want to know what the parents' adjusted gross income was. It gives that amount that was transferred from the IRS. Down at the bottom there, or the next question wants to know what was the parents' income earned from work. The parents answer that question, and then they're going to determine of that income from work what pertained to the father and what pertained to the mother. Now, income from work comes in 4 forms. That would be W-2 income, Schedule C business income, Schedule F farm income, and partnership income. So the parents are going to need to determine what are those 4 forms each one of them had, and enter the amount in the appropriate question for the father and mother. Okay, moving on. First question is, as of today, is either of your parents considered a dislocated worker? Through the FAFSA, financial aid offices have the ability to identify families that have special circumstances, like a job loss. By answering yes to this question, that does enable the financial aid offices at schools that you list on the FAFSA to run a listing to identify these families that might have these special circumstances and reach out to them and say, hey, it looks like based on your FAFSA information, you might have a mitigating circumstance. Get in contact with us. Let us know what's going on so we can potentially help you to lower that EFC to increase your students' aid eligibility. Don't count on that happening. Financial aid offices across the nation are understaffed and overworked. Despite their best intentions, they just don't have the manpower to identify families with special circumstances. So again, if you have a job loss in your family or anything like that, be proactive and reach out to the financial aid office and let them know what is going on with the family. Moving on, they want to know, in 2016 or 17, did anyone in the household receive any of those 6 or 7 forms of means-tested benefits like Medicaid, SSI, SNAP benefits, reduced lunch, cash assistance, and WIC? If any of those pertain to your family, you want to click on the appropriate box. Next, they want to know, you indicated that your parents filed a 1040. Were they eligible to file a 1040A or EZ? Yes or no? Going to click on next. Continuing with tax information, they want to know what the parents' income tax was for 2016. The answer is $8,900. That was transferred directly from the IRS. Next, they want to know the parents' exemptions. Again, that was transferred from the IRS. And then next, that brings us to additional financial information. You want to be really, really careful when you do the FASFA, but you want to be especially careful when you're in this section, because if you have any of these items and you miss them, that has an impact on your student's financial aid eligibility. These are items that could help lower your student's EFC. So the first one is any education credits. The government helps you out with that. If that is on your tax return, it gets transferred directly from the IRS. If you pay child support, click on the box. It'll give you the opportunity to enter the amount that you paid for 2016. If the student is on the work-study program, every dollar that they earn in the work-study program has a favorable impact on the FASFA for the next year. College grant and scholarship aid that was taxable, that's reported to the IRS. Combat pay and cooperative education program earnings. Next would be a section where you report any untaxed income that the family received. The first would be any 401k contributions that show up in box 12 on your W-2s. Next would be IRA deductions. If you had any of those, that was transferred from the IRS. If you receive child support, you check on that box. It gives you the opportunity to enter the dollar amount that was received. Tax-exempt interest income will come in from the IRS. Untaxed portions of IRA distributions and pensions will also be transferred from the IRS. Housing, food, and other living allowances paid to members of the military or clergy. Veterans non-educational benefits, and workers' comp and disability benefits. We click next. And then that brings us to another important question that I always get whenever I come out to the financial aid night. It says, what is considered as an asset and investment for financial aid purposes and what is not? Let's just go through this real quick. The government tells us that net worth means current value as of today of investments, businesses, and or farms, minus debts related to those same investments, businesses, and or investment farms. When calculating net worth, use 0 for investments or properties with a negative value. They tell us that investments include real estate, but not the home that you live in, rental property, trust funds, UGMA and UTMA accounts, money market funds, mutual funds, CDs, stock options, bonds, other security, installment and land sale contracts, etc. They continue to tell us that investments also include qualified educational benefits or educational savings plans like MET and MESP. Now the kicker about this, and this is where a lot of parents moan when I talk about this, is let's just go back to our FASFA example. We have, the family has 2 children. Let's say that the parents have a 529 plan for each one of them. That is considered a parental asset for financial aid purposes. What you have to do is you have to, for Johnny that's attending college on his FASFA, you have to not only include the total value of his 529 plan, but you have to add to that the sister's 529 plan as well, and then add to that any other assets or investments that the parents have. Question?
Having a trust doesn't matter, correct?
I'm sorry?
Having a trust doesn't matter.
Okay, if you have a trust does have to be included as an investment. Okay, yes?
What if that plan is in grandma's name?
Good question. Glad you brought that up, thank you. What if the 529 plan like MET or MSP is in grandmother's name? Then you don't have to include it. Got a thumbs up on that one. The back?
So even the twins, you have to report the siblings?
Yeah, the question is for student pays FASFA, if you have children B, C, and D, and they have the 529 plan, you have to include the value of their 529 plan in with student A's FASFA total amount. They continue to tell us that investments do not include the home you live in, the value of life insurance, retirement plans like 401k, pension funds, annuities, non-educational IRAs, KEO plans, etc. Some other common questions that we get, we have an UGMA or UTMA account. Whose is it? That belongs to the student. We already talked about the MET and MESP plan. That's considered an asset in the parent's name. If it's in someone else's name, then you don't include it. Coverdale savings plans in the parent's name are reported as a parental asset. If you have a business that you employ 100 or fewer employees, then you do not have to include the net worth of the business. Continuing on, that's going to bring us to the asset and investment questions on the FASFA. Now, in the EFC formula, a certain amount of the parent's assets are protected. It's called the asset protection allowance. For every family, it's different. They look at whether or not there's one or two parents in the household, and then they also look at the age of the older parent as of the last day of the calendar year to determine, you see that first question where it says, as of today, does the total amount of the parent's current assets exceed, and here it says $0. They're going to look at whether or not there's one or two parents in the household and the age of the older parent to plug in a number where that 0 is, okay? So hypothetically, we'll say that the question reads, as of today, does your parents' current assets exceed $25,000? If the parent's total assets that we just went through is under the $25,000 threshold, then you answer no, and then that asset protection allowance protects those assets in the EFC formula, and they are not considered in the EFC formula, okay? Continuing with the questions, we'll pretend that our answer was yes, that the assets exceed that. First question is, as of today, what is your parents' total balance of cash savings and checking? We have $750. Next question, as of today, what is the net worth of your parents' investments, including real estate, not the home they live in? And then the last question wants to know the net worth of the parents' business or farm. Now, I just want to let you know, we just went through the parent income and asset and investment section. There is a section that pertains to the student as well. The questions are identical. Due to time constraints tonight, we're not going to go through those. Just make sure or remember that you answer those questions for your student as well. Next, that brings us to the sign and submit section of the FASFA, where the student is going to read a disclosure, they're going to agree with it, and then they're going to enter their FSA ID. Continuing down the page, the parents are going to read the disclosure, enter their FSA ID, and then last you want to make sure that you click on lower right hand corner, submit my FAFSA now. That's going to bring up our confirmation page, which is going to give us our expected family contribution, our direct Stafford loan estimate, and we talked about this earlier, if you have another student that's in college, it gives you the ability to link the parental information to the other student's FAFSA application. Now, one other thing I want to point out, the government screenshots that they provided to us are not really the best, and they're really misleading. I don't know if you noticed or not, in this example, the parents' adjusted gross income was like $33,000. There's no way with 4 in a household and 2 in college that the student's EFC is going to be the $18,000 that you see there. So, you know, don't be frightened of that. I still encourage you to complete the FAFSA, okay? And then that'll give you an actual idea of what your EFC is going to be based on your student's income. And we made it. I want to thank you folks for coming out tonight. We had a really great audience and asked a lot of excellent questions. I hope this presentation has been beneficial in planning for your son or daughter's education. If you have any questions at any time throughout the financial aid process, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help. And I will be available down front here after the presentation if you want to ask me questions directly. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and drive safe.
There's this song, and I was going to ask that it be played at the prom the other night, but I thought if I played a country music song, it would clear the dance floor. I'm pretty sure that it would have. So I waited till tonight. And I was going to play the song for you over these awesome loudspeakers we have here in this room, but I decided it would be better coming from the voices of our students. So this song is called Take the Road Less Traveled. We have members of our choirs and some musicians who are going to play along with Mr. Peterson. And as you're listening, I want you to hear not just the words that the songs ask you to think about in terms of taking the road less traveled in your life and accomplishing your dreams, but I want you to hear the voices of these young people, these beautiful voices, these amazing voices that they have. And I want you to think about all of your voices and the world hearing your voices and how important that is and what amazing young people you are and all that you have to accomplish. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to this group to hear their amazing song. Thank you very much.
Thank you.